to the research community, and we're going to task them with certain outcomes, and we're going to have them come and bid on how to do the research. This is all being run by Jay Bhattacharya and I think Martin Koldorf may be also working on this on designing the grant proposals. So it's going to be done by credible scientists, by the most credible scientists from all over the world, and we're going to do it very, very quickly. Yeah, one more question. You identify yourself.
Oh, sorry. I'm Emma Bevins with Fierce Healthcare. Once you identify which environmental toxins are causing autism, what do you expect the impact to be on the industries that are causing those? You cited industry as something that would cause it.
I think we're going to figure out a way to make pressure on them to remove it. And I think also, there will be market forces that also exert pressure on them to remove it. And I want to say that I'm very grateful to President Trump because he tasked me on day one of this job with making this a priority, of finding out what's causing the autism epidemic, and we are going to do it for him. Thank you all very much.
Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr., the Secretary of the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, walking off the stage after a news conference talking about this new CDC study showing autism prevalence, showing that it has increased. You see some of the numbers on your screen there. Prevalence 1 in 31 among 8-year-olds. This was a study done at 16 sites across the country in 2022, showing that 3.4 times is prevalent in boys. The prevalence lower in white children, but again, the prevalence higher than in previous years, something that is a trend that we have seen. Obviously, discussion and questions over the cause of that, but something that the Secretary says they hope to have some answers by September when it comes to what is causing that. Well, we appreciate you joining us here on Fox 35 News Plus this morning. We've covered a lot of ground, had a number of live events that we took you to in this live hour. In this last hour, Governor Ron DeSantis in Fort Myers. We took you to the Florida House for that vote on banning cell phone use during the school day that Robert
Florida Live starts now.
Well, good afternoon to you and welcome into Florida Live. I'm Garrett Wymer, and thanks for joining us on this Wednesday afternoon live on Fox Local, fox13news.com, fox35orlando.com, and also on YouTube. Coming up later in the show, we're going to hear from Governor Ron DeSantis, who was speaking earlier today in Fort Myers, touched on a number of topics. He was there for a news conference in support of law enforcement, but ended up covering a number of topics that we will get into a little bit later in the show. In our Tampa connection in a few minutes, we're going to learn about a St. Petersburg police officer arrested. But we begin today with the Trump administration's crackdown on student visas now having an impact on Florida universities. Joining us live now via Zoom is Clara-Sophia Daly, reporter with the Miami Herald. Clara, we appreciate you joining us on Florida Live today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Clara, according to the Miami Herald's reporting, we know the Trump administration has canceled the visas of dozens of international students across the state, part of their crackdown of college campuses across the country. If you could first kind of walk us through the numbers that you've been able to confirm of those visas that have been canceled so far.
Yeah, so nationwide, I think now we are at over 1,000 students whose visas have been revoked. And in Florida, so far, from what I'm aware of, there are 29 students who have had their visas revoked, 18 at FIU, 8 at the University of Florida, and yeah, that's what we know so far.
And so what does this mean for the students? If you could just kind of explain to us, when you have that student visa revoked, what happens?
Yeah, so there can be a couple ways that this happens, but basically, there is a government database called SEVIS, which tracks whether or not an international student is compliant with the law. And what seems to be happening is that immigration officials are going into that database and changing the status of a student's legal standing to attend the university. And once that status is changed, that means that they are not allowed to attend class any longer. And for students who have graduated with F1 visas, there is a period known as OPT where they're legally allowed for a certain period of time to work in their field. And that is also taken away when their student status is revoked.
What have you learned about why these students in particular, what they maybe have in common that kind of could be spurring this on as far as their visas being canceled now?
Yeah, so I am not aware of why exactly these students in Florida specifically have had their visas revoked. There was an instance that I reported on about a student at the University of Florida who was stopped in a traffic stop, and he was driving with a suspended license. And it turned out that his status had also expired back in October. He was detained by immigration officials. And while he was in detention, he made the decision to leave on his own and go back to Colombia, where he is from. As far as the 29 students in Florida, it's not clear exactly what happened. What we do know is that in many other states, a similar thing is happening, and it seems that Immigration and Customs Enforcement is targeting students that have had any type of encounter with law enforcement. So this could be a traffic stop, um, some type of charge, that they were never convicted for, but just any type of encounter that may be on their record. And I spoke to some immigration attorneys who, in other states, are filing class action lawsuits on behalf of these students, alleging that these visa revocations are illegal. And the attorneys that I spoke to told me that it's possibly an AI mechanism that is being used to go through this government database and determine which students may have had some type of encounter with law enforcement, even if they were not breaking the law.
Is this something we expect to continue to see?
I'm not really in a position to, think about or decide what may or may not happen in the future. But I can say that over the past week, the numbers of visas that have been revoked from students across the nation has continued to climb as reporters find out about more of these instances. And also of note is that now with student visas who are being revoked, oftentimes the university is not notified by immigration that this is happening, and they find out from the student.
Now, we have heard some comments from Secretary of State Marco Rubio about student visas. And I know you also wrote a piece speaking to some students at Florida International University that were concerned because of some of his warnings.
Yeah, I have spoken to a handful of international students, and also I've spoken to a handful that did not want to speak to me because they are so scared that even speaking to the media off the record is a risk that they're not willing to take. International students right now, whether they're on F1 visas, even students on green cards, are very concerned. They feel like they cannot speak out, and go attending different political events. And they're really worried about potentially being detained or deported. Right now in the state of Florida, so far, 11 higher education institutions have signed on to the 287G program, which basically deputizes university police departments to enforce immigration law. It's a collaborative agreement between police departments at these universities and immigration. And so this is an added, an added level to this, and something that students who I've spoke to say makes them even more nervous, because now their campus police officers soon may be trained to actually act as immigration officials.
All right. Is anything else, Clara-Sophia, that you've learned that you want people to know about this before I let you go?
I think that's it. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for taking the time to speak with us. I always appreciate you joining us here on Florida Live, and we appreciate you talking with us this afternoon.
Thank you.
We're going to take a break, and we'll be right back after this. Welcome back into Florida Live. I'm Garrett Wymer, and thanks for joining us on this Wednesday afternoon, live on Fox Local and on YouTube. It is time now for our Tampa Connection, and for that, we're going to bring in Fox 13 news anchor Linda Hurtado. And Linda, we appreciate you joining us this afternoon.
Good to be with you, Garrett. Hey, we're going to start with the story we hate to report, but an officer with the St. Petersburg Police Department has been arrested. He is accused of sharing confidential information from law enforcement databases. So investigators tell us that this officer, Brandon Kleiber, shared protected information with Brian Eckley, who's accused of planting explosive devices at the Seminole Hard Rock Casino in Tampa last year. You may have heard of that story. Police Chief Anthony Holloway says that Kleiber provided vehicle tag numbers, driver's license information, and other details on certain people that Eckley requested. Holloway also says that Kleiber and Eckley have known each other for more than 15 years. Let's listen to the chief.
That authority to hold confidential information, we should hold that as exactly what it is, confidential. So I am very disappointed at this officer for giving away that trust.
Holloway says they're looking into whether this officer may have given protected information to anyone else and if he profited from it. The chief also says this is the second employee in his 10 years at the department who they've caught sharing confidential information from law enforcement databases. So we are certainly continuing to follow that case.
And
we also have a man sentenced to death for a murder in Tampa. He is now set to be executed next month. Governor Ron DeSantis signed a death warrant for Glenn Rogers. That's who you see there, now 62 years old. Rogers has been on death row since 1997 after he was convicted of killing Tina Marie Cribbs. The two were last seen leaving a bar in Gibsonton in November of 1995. Cribbs was found stabbed to death in a Tampa motel room about 2 days later. That's not the only murder case tied to Rogers. He later received another death sentence in California in 1999 for the murder of Sandra Gallagher, which happened 2 months before Cribbs' death. Rogers has also been suspected in several other murder cases nationwide, including in Mississippi and Ohio. And his execution is scheduled for May 15th, making that the 5th death warrant that the governor has signed so far this year. So, Garrett, you guys aren't too far away from us, so I imagine you guys get the same kind of weather that we're getting over here in the Tampa Bay area, and it's been really
Really
Same
dry.
for you guys?
Yes, yeah, we've already seen have seen a pretty large brush fire that folks have been dealing with in Volusia County. Thankfully, they've been making some good progress on it, but scary conditions when you're talking about this, high risk.
Sure. Yeah, sure enough. In fact, because of those scary conditions, Polk County has initiated a burn ban. We're going to tell you a little bit about that. Dry conditions, like we talked about, making it an increased brush fire risk. This ban covers an unincorporated area along with the city of Winter Haven, which decided to opt in. So if you're wondering when a burn ban takes effect, there is a scale known as the Keach-Byram Drought Index, which ranges from 0 to 800, with 800 being the driest. And at least 50% of the county, if it reaches 500 in that index, that's when your burn ban goes into effect. Polk County officials say as of Tuesday, 55% of the county was at 500 or greater. So what does the burn ban prohibit? A list of things. They include campfires, bonfires, unpermitted controlled burns, burning yard or household trash, burning construction debris, organic debris, also igniting fireworks. Polk County joins Sarasota County as the two counties in the area with burn bans in effect. Last week, state officials said more than 1,000 wildfires, 1,000 have already burned this year, compared to 550 at the same point a year ago. So we hope everyone pays attention to that. We saw what happened in California. The fires can get out of control quickly.
Yeah, it doesn't take long, and we know there's really not a whole lot of relief coming right away either when it comes to the rains that we really need to help with that.
Good point. Hey, we're going to move now to the Cross Bay Ferry. Don't know if you've ever ridden that, but we have some news about the ferry. It's really grown in popularity as a way to go between Tampa and St. Pete without crossing a bridge. That will soon come to an end over a contract dispute. Hillsborough County leaders voted today to terminate the contract with HMS Ferries. So the company has operated the Cross Bay Ferry since it launched back in 2017, but it recently announced plans to switch to a much slower vessel, one that would take 2 hours to go one way instead of 50 minutes. You probably know what the problem is here. That's too long. City officials in both Tampa and St. Pete, along with Hillsborough County leaders, just said no. So the county sent a letter giving HMS a deadline to find a vessel that would meet the original requirements. The company responded by saying unable to do that. There was no public comment on the issue during today's meeting prior to a unanimous vote by commissioners. But one county commissioner said last week that he's hopeful for the future of transportation by water. Here's what they said.
Well, I think it's been a nice amenity and the public has really enjoyed it. I hope that one day we'll see us actually make use of our waterways as a transit connection, because in fact, it's a wonderful way to move people around.
So across the bay, the Pinellas Suncoast Transit Authority has already been working to determine if it can purchase and operate a ferry on its own beginning in October. That plan's still in the works. PSDA also hopes Hillsborough County will contribute several $1 million by the way of an unused federal grant, but it's not clear whether that will be approved. I hear pretty good reports about the Cross Bay Ferry, but I do know a lot of people also say that 2 hours is too long.
Yeah.
They can drive in a shorter amount of time. So.
Yeah, you can certainly understand that. That is a bit of a long trip for something like that. So, Fox 13 News anchor Linda Hurtado, we appreciate you joining us for today's Tampa Connection.
Have a great day, Garrett.
All right, you do the same. We're going to take a break here on Florida Live, but we'll be right back. Welcome back into Florida Live. I'm Garrett Wymer. Thanks for joining us on this Wednesday afternoon. Governor Ron DeSantis was in Fort Myers earlier today. The topic was supporting law enforcement, and he was talking once again about the raises that he wants to see for new law enforcement officers as a way to recruit and retain them. This news conference at the Florida Highway Patrol station in Fort Myers. But he also talked about lawmakers in the Florida House slamming them once again, calling what's going on there, quote, really treacherous, saying that people are using the Republican label to win elections, but then applying their own personal agendas. Here's a little bit of what he said about that as this rift continues to grow.
But what's going on in Tallahassee right now with the Florida House of Representatives is really treacherous, what they're doing, because they all ran on this agenda. They never ran against law enforcement. I can tell you that, because they would have shown the door by the voters if they had done that. They never ran on trying to overturn our reforms in higher education. They never ran on joining with Democrats to try to manufacture smears against the administration, the governor, even the first lady. They've tried, to do that on. They never ran on any of that stuff. But that's what they're doing. They are not doing what they told you they would do. They are effectively stabbing the voters in the back with this really, really terrible agenda. This is being driven by the leadership in the House, by some of the entrenched staff. This is the swamp in action. This is the swamp trying to strike back after 6 years of success, after Florida being the model state that so many people have sought to emulate, not just moving here. We will take cadres of people will come and visit Florida. We have people that are mimicking Hope Florida in different states across the country. These House members, a lot of them, they make fools of themselves. They don't even know what the program does. It's clear they don't know what they're talking about. And yet, how come someone from Iowa knows and is now implementing that there? They have a bill in the Florida legislature that will serve the purpose of undoing the conservative reforms that we've instituted in higher education. They want the universities to be able to pursue a leftist indoctrination agenda. And they actually cut the governor out of the process because they know that I am your voice of the millions of Floridians who sent me here to be able to ensure that these institutions reflect your values and the best interests of the state. They want to cut that out. They want to reverse course. This is a donkey in an elephant suit when they're going after law enforcement. This is not what they campaigned on when they sought your vote. You elected this House under false pretenses. They didn't tell you that they were going to throw away their principles and just follow whatever the leadership told them to do. But that's exactly what they're doing with this budget. And I just think it's disgraceful. I haven't really figured out what they're trying to. I mean, they obviously want to help personal injury lawyers get rich. I know that because they've put a lot of bills up to try to do that, which, by the way, are dead on arrival anyway. So go ahead and do it. Make my day.
Now, after some of those initial remarks, here we go, sorry about that. After some of those initial remarks, Governor DeSantis also did answer some questions from reporters, and he was asked a little more about things going on in the House, but also about the ongoing investigations into Hope, Florida. Here's some of what he had to say about that.
The leader of the Florida Senate, the senators are working constructively with these family members. And with our administration, I do think the Florida House is embarking on really unprecedented exhibit of self-sabotage. They are the least productive Florida House of Representatives that we have had in the modern history of the Florida Republican Party, certainly since I've been here. Not even close, not even within the same ballpark of the other House of Representatives that we've had. Of course, those were under different speakers, Oliva, Sprouse, and Renner, for the first 6 years. So the divide is not as much between me and the Florida House of Representatives leadership. There is a divide, but it's the divide that the Florida House of Representatives of leadership is doing to their own voters. When they're attacking me, people say, oh, they're fighting the governor. Well, yeah, but they're really fighting you. They're really fighting the people that elected them because they're not honoring the agenda that they ran on. And I think you have, I said this yesterday, most of these rank and file members, so probably some of the folks down here in Southwest Florida, I've known a lot of these guys, we've worked well. The leadership tells them they have to do certain things. And if they don't do it, they lose a committee assignment, they get their bills pulled, they don't get appropriation. So it's a retribution that is done. And they kind of hold that hammer. You have these staff members that order these people around. And so I think a lot of them say, well, I kind of have to vote this way, otherwise I'm going to get penalized. And that may be true, but that's not leadership. Leadership means you got to dig in and do what's right. If you say you're for law enforcement and you're a rank and file House member, you need to come out and say this is wrong, that what they're doing is wrong. You got to be willing to do that. Is there going to be retribution to you? Yeah, there probably will be. But you know what? If I had taken that position back when I was getting hit during COVID or fighting Disney, I can't take any incoming. I got to do what's safe. This state would not be where it is today. This higher ed to try to kneecap our ability to hold higher ed accountable, I don't think that's going to get on the desk. If it does, we'll invite you all to the ceremony. We'll veto it. That's fine, but I don't even think it's going to get there. The whole thing that the House leadership's doing is a manufactured fraud. This is a hoax. They are trying to smear one of the most successful programs anywhere in the country, which is our government policy. It's not an associated church, it's our government policy that has gotten 30,000 people off of welfare and saved $100 million. But more important than that, it's actually given people hope. It's given them meaning. It's put them on their feet, and people know who are in need, that there's actually people in the community that care about you. And it may be the church, it may be a charity, it may be some of these other things, but that's the name of the game. Hope Florida, because of the First Lady's vision and leadership, has made a real difference in our communities. And there's some people that are threatened by that. There's some people that don't like that. For some of these Republican leaders to be joining with liberal Democrats and liberal media to manufacture smears against Hope Florida, against me, against the First Lady, it just shows you they are not on your team. They are not doing what they said that they would do. So I thought the whole thing yesterday was a total flop. I think that these are people that are just desperate for any type of attention that they can get, but they're not doing the people's business. And I can tell you there's nothing coming out of the Florida House of Representatives that is going to rival the success that Hope Florida has had in any way, shape, or form.
Meanwhile, breaking this afternoon, the executive director of Hope Florida is resigning. That's according to a scoop from FloridaPolitics.com reporting that Eric Dellenbach, who we saw testify yesterday in front of that House panel that's been looking into the Hope Florida and Hope Florida Foundation, the funding, all those questions that we've been talking about quite a bit here. He has resigned. According to the resignation letter that they are reporting on, they say he resigned about a month ago with that effective May 1st. So still learning more about that. We're going to take a break here on Florida Live, but we'll be right back in 2 minutes. Welcome back into Florida Live. I'm Garrett Wymer, and thanks for joining us live on Fox Local and on YouTube. Florida Attorney General James Othmeyer was on Fox and Friends First this morning, talking about the city of Orlando agreeing to enforce Florida's immigration laws. This comes after the Attorney General had sent a letter to Orlando Mayor Buddy Dyer warning him of consequences if the city continued to enforce its Trust Act passed in 2018, and basically saying it was calling it a kind of a sanctuary policy. Now, the mayor of Orlando says it was a misunderstanding, that the city has passed a 287G agreement with ICE, and that they have and will enforce federal immigration laws. Here's the Attorney General on Fox News earlier today.
Yeah, so we're going to be a rule of law state here in Florida. We've got the most robust legislation in the country when it comes to combating illegal immigration and working with the federal government. And we're not going to have any sanctuary cities or jurisdictions anywhere in the state. So we've made clear to local governments, mayors, if you want to, if you want to obstruct and get in the way of our local law enforcement and their ability to work with ICE and get the 287G delegations, so that you can help ICE get illegal immigrants out of this state. If you stand in the way, we're going to hold you accountable. We can take civil action against you. The governor can remove you from office. And there's other tools at our disposal. So a few of these jurisdictions have popped their head up saying they might not like the law and they might not want to work with us. We've put them on notice very quickly. And thankfully, so far, all have come around and they are going to enforce the law.
Yeah, this reminds me of that old Staples commercial when they push the button, they say that was easy. It seems like Florida has a much easier time, and I'm not saying it was easy for you, but convincing their localities and other cities in their state to comply with the law. Whereas you look at, places like New York and other places maybe with a Republican governor and a non-Republican city, they have a more difficult time. So why? What is it about you guys in Florida that you're able to convince people to conform quicker?
Yeah, look, our leaders, they know what they were elected to do. They know what the citizens of Florida want. Public safety is what makes us such an incredible state. And our law enforcement officers, they're excited to enforce the law for a change. We're the first state that had all of our state law enforcement officers, all of our sheriffs formally certified by ICE to get this delegated responsibility. And look, we show that we mean what we say. We're not just talk. If you're going to break the law, we're not going to just talk about it. We are going to hold you accountable. So local governments, mayors, you're all on notice. We want to work together with you. We want to help to keep Florida safe.
Give you a live look right now inside the Florida House, and also give you a live look inside the Florida Senate. This has been in session. The House has been in session since 10:30 this morning, and the Senate has been in session just since 2 o'clock. But a lot of things happening in Tallahassee. I want to let you know a little bit of what we have seen happen in the House today. They passed unanimously House Bill 949 that would ban cell phone use during the school day. That would extend the current ban of not being able to use cell phones during instruction. Now, we should note that the future of that bill is unclear right now. There is no Senate companion bill, but the Senate could end up taking up that bill directly. We will see what ends up happening with that. Now, the House also passed a bill that would ban certain development on state park land. That was also unanimous, 115-0. We're talking things like golf courses, hotels, pickleball courts. We should note that the Senate version of that bill is different, and we don't know the stance of the governor when it comes to that, and whether that would be something he would be welcome to sign, even if the Senate were to pass it. One thing we know the governor is not in favor of, and that is the higher education bill. He talked about it multiple times, just in those short clips that we played for you just a few minutes ago. In fact, he has threatened to veto that bill, but the House today approved the bill 104-8 that would limit the governor's involvement in university presidential job searches. It would also require all candidates to be public and not just the finalists. I want to play for you the remarks on the floor during debate from Representative Michelle Salzman. She's a Republican from Escambia County who addressed this, who has addressed the words from the governor, who has spoken out against this bill. And here's a little bit of what she said.
I first want to address my colleague across the aisle and just say I hear you, and I get it. We have a policy disagreement, but the policy disagreement is personal to you, and I respect that. I still love you, and I appreciate you speaking out today. In closing, I just want to answer one question. Why are we changing back? Why are we here? When we passed this bill a couple of years ago, the process was totally in the sunshine. People knew who applied at the universities, they knew who made the final cut, and they knew who got selected. When we changed the law, we only put in the shade the first part. We said, guys, when you first apply, I was here on the House floor. When you first apply for the presidential application process, you don't want to put yourself out there, because what if you're not even in the top 3 and now everybody knows that you're trying to get this job? So we said we need to put that part in the shade. Members, it's going to be fine because the top 3 are still going to be public. We said that, which got a lot of us to say, okay, we can get down with that. The first line, the first round is not public, but then the final round is public, so we can at least see who we are selecting in the top, why, and how we get to the number 1 who is selected. That is why we passed that bill. But members, as soon as we passed that bill, the bureaucrats changed the policy. They put the entire process in the shade, and it created a huge level of distrust amongst Floridians across the state. There is no arguments, there's no question, this is no conversation about the people that have been selected up until this point. I actually like all of them. I think they were great. But when we have questions risen from Floridians, from constituents in the communities in which these presidents are selected, and we can't answer as even state lawmakers, how did we get to those guys? I don't know why they became president. So then speculations come. Media does one thing. People say one thing. People in back rooms whisper unanimous conversations, off the record. And then it creates even more distrust in Floridians. Members, we have a fantastic education system. This is not about what we have. This is about showing the voters what we're doing. This is about transparency in government. We are not removing the governor's power from anything. There is no removal of powers. He appoints the people that are making these choices. You can't get any better than that. You can't. This isn't an attack on people that have been selected. This isn't an attack on the Board of Governors. This isn't an attack on our great governor. This is simply bringing the second largest component of the state budget into the sunshine. Choices we are making for one of the largest components of our tax dollars should be in the sunshine. They should be term limited. We shouldn't have people on Board of Governors or Board of Trustees for 30 years. 83% of Americans said we want term limits everywhere. So here we are. The bill does term limits. The bill requires you to be a Florida resident or an alum of the university. Members, do any of you want some outsider telling you how to run Florida? No, we don't. The bill brings transparency. It is good governance. This bill is good governance.
We're going to take a break here on Florida Live, but we'll be right back after this. Welcome back into Florida Live. Here's a live look along Florida's Space Coast from our Launch Credit Union camera in Titusville. We know if you're up early on Monday morning, you'll get to see the launch from Launch Complex 39A at Kennedy Space Center of SpaceX's 32nd commercial resupply mission heading up to the International Space Station. Now, earlier today, NASA and the ISS National Laboratory held a webinar to show off the research project that'll be heading into space.
These missions are critical to our ability to launch and support research performed by our on-orbit crew, and we are excited to sponsor a diverse mixture of experiments as part of this launch. We're even more excited that you'll be able to hear about these experiments from the investigators themselves. As some of you may know, our role at the ISS National Lab is to enable access to the station for the benefit of life on Earth, while also helping to foster a growing economy in low Earth orbit. The Center for the Advancement of Science in Space, or CASIS as it's known by its acronym, has now been managing the ISS National Laboratory since 2011. And during that time, we have sponsored more than 800 payloads to the space station. Working in tandem with our partners and colleagues at NASA, we seek to maximize utilization of this incredible research vehicle in space by partnering with other U.S. government agencies, industry, and academic researchers to leverage our sponsorship of up to 50% of U.S. resource allocation and crew time to the International Space Station. We, in partnership with NASA, are heavily involved in research output on the station. As I am sure my colleague Jennifer Buckley will touch on in her remarks, later this year marks a significant milestone in human exploration. As for nearly 25 years, the space station has maintained a continuous human presence in space, representing a beacon of partnership, collaboration, and innovation that will endure long after the station returns to Earth. We look forward to continuing this human achievement in the coming years, all the while sending innovative research to space that not only further enables exploration, but translates into new medical discoveries and manufacturing applications that promise to improve life here on Earth. An example of one such project comes from investigators at Portland State University who will send Elvis to the space station. Not that Elvis, I'm afraid, but rather the Extant Life Volumetric Imaging System, which is an advanced microscopy system that uses holographic technology to deliver detailed three-dimensional views of cellular life. If successful, Elvis will allow scientists to study the adaptability and resilience of life under extreme conditions, further enabling our ability to detect life beyond Earth. We're also supporting an experiment from Sophie's Bionutrients, who is working with Bioserve Space Technology. Their investigation aims to develop plant-based, protein-rich alternatives to meat using microalgae. This investigation seeks to examine how microgravity affects protein yields in microalgae that acquire nutrition from organic compounds to grow. Results could provide insights into the fundamental mechanisms of microalgal cell growth, metabolism, and protein production. The last project that I'll highlight comes from our longstanding partnership with the National Science Foundation, with whom we partner to annually support release solicitations in the fields of transport phenomena. This includes gas, fluid, and particle dynamics, which are profoundly affected by the absence of gravity, and also in the fields of tissue engineering and mechanobiology. Both of these particular endeavors seek to advance fundamental knowledge as an important mission of the National Science Foundation so that they can lead to more applied investigations in the future. On the CRS-32 mission, the National Science Foundation is funding 3 projects, one of them from Menschlar Polytechnic Institute and supported by TechMasters, which aims to use microgravity to study fluid flow in protein solutions to better understand why protein clumping occurs during the manufacturing of protein-based pharmaceuticals. This remains a significant challenge in the pharmaceutical industry. In space, liquids form into a floating self-contained sphere, allowing researchers to study complex protein behaviors and motion without the walls of a container that may alter protein behavior when studied here on Earth.
As Mike mentioned earlier, we are coming up on the 25th anniversary of continuous crew presence on the International Space Station. To date, we have served over 5,000 investigators and conducted over 4,000 experiments. On this particular mission, we have over 30 new payloads that are enabled by this mission across ISS National Lab, NASA, and our international partners. I'd like to highlight just a couple of them that we will be conducting on the NASA and partnership side before we hear more in depth from some of our researchers today. The first one is our smartphone video guidance sensor, or SVGS2. This one's coming out of NASA's Space Technology Mission Directorate. It uses the space station's Astrobee free-flying robots to demonstrate control of small satellites using vision-based sensor developed by NASA. The visual locating software on the Astrobee robots is guided by beacons, which we install on the wall of the International Space Station. Results from this experiment could improve accuracy and reliability of guidance, navigation, and control systems for applications such as groups of small satellites, docking of crewed spacecraft, as well as operation of multiple robots on the ground working together. The next one is the Atomic Clock Ensemble in Space, also called ACES. ACES is an external instrument that will be mounted to the Columbus module, and this one is being launched by the European Space Agency, and they have collaboration with NASA's Science Mission Directorate. This one, as I mentioned in the title, is an atomic clock. According to Einstein's theory of general relativity, gravity affects the passing of time. So ACES tests theories of gravitation by creating a network of clocks, and ACES will link its own highly precise clock with the most accurate clocks on Earth and compare them to measure the flow of time. ACES looks for tiny changes in the laws of physics over time, which could hint in new discoveries about dark matter and fundamental forces of nature. Results could have applications in scientific studies of measurement, search for dark matter, fundamental physics, and also could help contribute to improving navigation for spacecraft as well as global satellites. Here on Earth, super precise clocks are essential for technologies such as GPS, internet security, financial transactions, as well as scientific research. We also are going to be flying genetic exchange and microgravity for biofilm bioremediation, or GEM-B2. This one is being sponsored by the NASA Mars Campaign Office. It's building on the prior experiment, and the B2 version aims to understand gene transfer mechanisms in bacteria. The goal of this is to inhibit core biofilm-forming genes in water resources aboard the International Space Station to maintain crew health and safety. It takes a look at biofilms, which are communities of microorganisms that aggregate and bind to a surface. Typically, they leave behind a slimy residue that can cause water or material fouling, or even could cause issues for crew health. Using donor bacteria, the crew will introduce DNA inserts called plasmids to the reciprocal or recipient bacteria that may interfere with these biofilm-forming genes and hopefully inhibit the formation of biofilm. And the last investigation I want to mention is Advanced Space Experiment Processor Industrial Crystallization Cassette. This is also called ADSEP-ICC. This is coming out of NASA's In-Space Production Applications, or INSPA, and this looks at the creation of golden nanospheres in microgravity. The investigation is using Redwire's Industrial Crystallization Cassette, ICC hardware, adding capabilities to their existing protein crystal facility on board. This is growing more golden nanospheres that have potential for applications in things such as biomedical research, cancer diagnostics and treatment, and golden nanospheres also hold promise for optical imaging, biosensing, and targeted drug delivery.
So again, that launch is scheduled or targeted for 4:15 a.m. on Monday. So if you are up bright and early, keep an eye on the skies for that launch from Space Launch Complex 39A at Kennedy Space Center. We're going to take a break here on Florida Live, but we'll be right back right after this. Welcome back into Florida Live. Here's a live look at Kia Center in downtown Orlando, the home of the Orlando Magic, where last night the Magic beat the Hawks 120-95 to advance. And that was the NBA play-in game. They now make it to the playoffs. They will play the defending champion, Boston Celtics. That first game tips off 3:30 p.m. on Sunday afternoon. So after last night's game, the Magic talked about what has been an up and down season for them, but also their resilience in holding off a Hawks comeback in the third quarter.
I think we've been in these situations in the close games at home. Our ability to get the stops and get the runs at the right time was very big for us. But you saw the group come together on the court when they went on the run. I think we had 6-1 fouls in that third quarter. But our ability to not let that rattle us and then dig in on the defensive end and get out and get some easy baskets, now that created the momentum. Our crowd got into it, and that just propelled us.
Jamal, what kind of impact did Cole Anthony have on tonight's game, and what kind of season has it been for him?
I mean, it's been up and down for him. 26 points tonight, but just his energy, his spark, his juice, what he provides for this team coming off that bench. He plays fearlessly, and that's how we need him to continue to play. It's been up and down because there's been moments when, we talked about it early in the year, he was out of the rotation, and then he found a way. The next time down, he walks himself back in and helps us win the Miami game. So that's just who he is. His resiliency, his toughness, his spark that he gives this team off the bench is just, it's what we need.
In that same vein, Cole, AB, Dell, they all had big games. It seemed like just whenever Atlanta made a run that they were one of the three that had an answer. Just those three combined, just kind of speaking for the resolve of your entire group, how vital were they?
They were big. I think AB's defense at different times was fantastic, being able to get in the passing lane, attacking the basket, getting downhill, making the right plays. I think Dell was the biggest key to this game right now. He started He started the game that way. His physicality, his presence, his rebounding, his toughness set the tone from the beginning of the game, and I think that's what we're going to continue to need from him.
Jamal, can you talk a little bit about the challenges that you've had this season with the major injuries to major players, how the next step up mentality has strengthened the team overall for players, for example, AB, who had a lot of time in the starting lineup because of injuries?
Yeah, it says a lot about the group. It says a lot about the coaches. It says a lot about these players, that there's a level of toughness and resiliency to them. And I've said it time and time again, this group is enough, no matter who's on the floor. They've proven that they're enough to do at any given time, no matter the circumstances. And what that adversity did was it created opportunity. It created opportunity for guys that might not have gotten it before, and then you're able to see guys step up. So in these big moments and big games that they've been in, we've had probably 30-plus close games. These guys have been in them, so they understand that these moments, they're enough to make the shot, they're enough to make the right play, and that's what you see these guys doing, making the right play at the right time because of what we went through early on, that they understand their confidence level and who they are and who they are to this team.
Coach, you mentioned confidence. A lot of guys stepped up today, 5 guys in double figures. What does that do for your confidence heading into the playoffs?
These guys believe in each other. They believe in what we're capable of doing. And again, this is what the adversity early on created, because you have to come together. You have to focus on what you can do in whatever circumstances you're in, and that's what these guys have proven to do. It wasn't easy. We had to figure it out, hard conversations to figure out what we need to do in order to get over the hump. We talked about home court last year, but obviously circumstances changed, and so our ability to find home court in the play-in was big. However, we have to look at it, and that's what this group has done.
I mean, we got off to a hot start. They went on their own run, I think cut it to 4.
And we are tracking some breaking news here. Here's a live look in Melbourne where a brush fire there has spread to 10 acres. This is in the city of Melbourne. According to officials, it's shut down John Rhodes Boulevard in both directions near Enterprise Court. They're calling this the digital fire, 0% contained right now. Crews are working to stop its spread. You can see water coming from that fire truck there. I see quite a bit of smoke in the area as well. This is, again, the city of Melbourne initially reported as 5 acres before it doubled in size. Crews from Melbourne and Brevard County are working right now to put out that fire. You can see that going on right now. Still don't know what caused this. Obviously, the drought conditions are playing a role.